weekly Social Security check. But here's the problem. This only works if you make a tiny change to your account. And after looking into your account with us, I see that you're not set up to take advantage of these potential profits. Let me repeat that. Our team already made this change to 11,546 of our readers. But for some reason, our records indicate that you are not one of them. That means you could miss out on the big paycheck scheduled for this coming Monday. Now, if collecting an extra $10,200 per week or an extra $40,800 per month doesn't interest you, then you should click out of this page right now. Still here? Good. Then in the next 60 seconds, I'm going to show you a brand new way of extracting this type of money from the markets. And I'll show you how to get your account set up to take advantage of this strategy. It all has to do with a patent application you see here right in my hand. It's patent application number D0361193, filed with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And we finally found a way to leverage this patent to hand you huge potential gains week in and week out. See, what makes this patent so exciting is that it gives you a chance to see big market moves before those moves happen. And it couldn't be easier to use. All you have to do is watch the indicator behind this patent spike. Then place one simple trade, and you can walk away just days later with a huge payday, sometimes in as little as just one day. Now, the only way for you to gain access to this patent pending indicator is to have your account set up the proper way. And that's why I've rushed this video to you, because the next indicator spike is just around the corner, set for this upcoming Monday.
Let me show you how this weekly paycheck indicator works. For example, look what happened with a company called Indicatore earlier this year. For months, shares had gone nowhere. Then the weekly paycheck indicator, or WPI for short, registered a spike on February 10. 4 days later, boom! The website MarketWatch broke the news. Shares of Indicatore soared in active pre-market trade Tuesday after the medical company announced a deal to be acquired by Hologic Incorporated. Before the announcement, shares were trading at $51.50. Then, instantly after it became public news, shares were trading at $65.85. Now keep in mind, no one was supposed to know about this acquisition before it was public. People only found out after MarketWatch published the news. In other words, it should have been impossible for everyday investors to profit from this announcement. But incredibly, the WPI knew that something was about to happen, and it would have tipped you off about the impending big news, exactly 4 days in advance, giving you the opportunity to collect 429% gain in mere hours using my strategy. Isn't that exciting? Imagine investing $1,000 on a Friday when the WPI first registered the spike and cashing out with a profit of $5,290 on the following Tuesday. That's the power of the weekly paycheck indicator. It can allow you to collect a big paycheck week after week, all by knowing big news before it actually happens. And it's easy enough to use, even if you've never traded a stock in your life. Get in when you see the spike, get out a few days later when the news hits the public. No need to tie up your hard-earned money in volatile markets, and no need to suffer through market crashes. Simply by looking at these spikes, you can get ahead of the big market news before it becomes public. I'm talking about getting ahead of mergers and acquisition news, surprise earnings announcements, and Food and Drug Administration's approvals of new drugs, and any unexpected news that might trigger a one-day explosion in the stock. News that only insiders can possibly know about. Yes, I realize this is an unfair advantage, but it's also 100% legal. And it's the only way I know for the little guy to profit from big one-day moves and potentially collect a big paycheck every week. Just look what happened with shares of Sarepta Therapeutics. September 14 seemed like just any other day for the company. Nothing special was going on. But behind the scenes, something unusual happened that day. The WPI registered a spike. Take a look. Then just 5 days later, something incredible happened. The FDA issued the following press release approving Sarepta's new drug. As soon as the press release was published, shares of Sarepta instantly skyrocketed, catching everyone in the market by surprise. I mean, unless you work for the FDA or were somehow directly involved in the approval process. There was no way of knowing that this would happen. But for reasons that will become clear soon, the WPI knew something big was about to happen. And had you invested $1,000 on that Wednesday when the spike appeared, you could have cashed out with a big paycheck of $4,710 on the following Monday. We're talking about making almost 5 times your money in 5 days. Do you see why I call this the weekly paycheck indicator? Simply get in when you see the spike, get out a few days later with a big paycheck, you're in, you cash out. And you don't risk your money in long-term plays or volatile market swings. So your gains can go up and your risk can go down. Sometimes you can literally be in and out with your money in just one day. For example, on February 28th, the WPI registered a spike for shares on Weight Watchers. Once again, at that time, there was not much going on with the company. Shares had actually been left for dead after so many disappointing earnings results. But the very next day, something amazing happened. The company reported better than expected earnings and shares exploded higher. This was a surprise to everyone on Wall Street. As Forbes reported, the result left many on Wall Street licking their wounds. Investors had been massively betting against the shares of Weight Watchers, expecting they would fall. But again, the WPI knew something big was about to happen. And had you used this tool, you could have returned that surprising earnings report into a big paycheck, pocketing gains of 471% in one day. Isn't that amazing? I'm talking about investing $1,000 on February 28 and cashing out with $5,710 the very next day. Of course, not all gains happen this fast. Our research on a select group of trades showed the average WPI opportunity lasted about 7 days. And when you combine the WPI with something I call the fast cash contracts, there's an opportunity for you to collect a big paycheck every week. I'll tell you more about those fast cash contracts in just a moment. But first, imagine what your life will be like when you and your loved ones no longer have to worry about money. Simply get in when you see the spike, get out a few days later with the potential for a big paycheck. Just look what happened with shares of chemical company Chemours. The WPI registered a spike on February 9. 4 days later, boom, you could have turned $1,000 into a big paycheck of $3,030. Do that each and every week, and you're looking at an extra monthly income of $12,120 with little effort. Same thing happened with Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba. On August 2nd, the WPI registered a spike. About a week later, boom, starting with just $2,500, you could have collected a $10,725 paycheck. Do that every week, and you're looking at an extra annual income of more than $500,000. Putting you instantly in the top 1% of the top 1% earners in all of America. Imagine how amazing your family and loved ones would feel when they realize you're extracting so much money from the markets, that they will never have to worry about money again, ever again. Earlier this year, for example, the WPI also registered a spike in global blood therapeutics. Just 2 days later, boom, you could have collected a $5,100 paycheck. With this kind of weekly income, by the next month, you could add $20,400 to your bank account. And by next year, you'd be looking at an extra income of $265,200. Can you imagine if this happened to you? Look, when you can compound your money this fast, week in and week out, you could be making enough to fund your entire retirement and spend your golden years doing the things you love instead of worrying about money. Remember, because you're in and out so fast, you don't tie up your money in the markets long term. What that means is that you're not only making huge gains, you're actually slashing your risk exposure too. It's a win-win, as the saying goes, and let me tell you this. If you've lost money with other indicators or trading systems in the past, it's not your fault. That's because every other system on earth I'm aware of is based on price data. They only trigger a buy signal when the price changes, after the price moves. By the time you get in, it's already too late. The breakthrough WPI indicator you're about to see is totally different. It's a brand new way of making money. It's all about getting ahead of everybody else and having the chance to collect a big paycheck when the information finally becomes public. That's why it's protected by U.S. patent application D0365193. Ask yourself, of all the other systems you've tried before, how many of their creators went through the legal process, the time invested, and the huge fees it takes to file a patent? Here's a different way to think about this. Imagine someone has just lit a match, and think about what happens to the match in the next few moments, because that's how valuable information flows in the marketplace. And when there's new information about a big event, an acquisition, FDA approval, earnings surprise, etc., only a handful of people know about it, people who are directly involved with the situation. They're holding a match that's just been struck. The information they have is red hot. Then that information starts to leak out. The insiders start passing the burning match to others. First to people close to the insiders, maybe friends and family members, and then to brokers, and to CNBC and other news outlets. By the time a public announcement is finally made, that match is completely burned. There's nothing else left. The information is worthless because the stock has already popped and the big money has already been made. It's simply too late to profit from the news. Remember that famous line in the movie Wall Street when trader Gordon Gekko said, "You're either on the inside or on the outside"? Well, everyday investors like you and me have always been on the outside. We only got the burn stick. I'm sure you've noticed this too, right? Only insiders with access to special information were able to profit from those big one-day moves. The little guy was simply left out of those big gains. That rigged game ends today. After 16 years of secrecy, this patent-pending indicator is finally available to everyday investors like you. When I joined the Chicago Board of Trade, working through the ranks from being a runner, a phone clerk, and a broker, all the way up to becoming a professional trader and a member of the Chicago Board of Trade, where I traded my own account on the floor and competed with the world's best traders. Even though this patent-pending indicator is the biggest discovery of my career, I've never talked about it on TV or anywhere else. Not even with my own family members. And the reason is simple. This was confidential information I wasn't allowed to share with anyone until today. Let me explain. You see, I didn't develop this indicator myself. I was just lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time. My lucky day came a couple of years ago when I was teaching money-making strategies to everyday investors at a trading seminar. During the event, I met another instructor called Mike, name changed for privacy reasons. Like myself, he was a professional trader. And during the cocktail hour, he told me about a proprietary indicator he developed around 16 years ago. One that could help tip him off about big market news before it became public. I was skeptical at first. After all, I spent 25 years working in the heart of the largest options exchange in the world, and I'd never heard anything like that. But then he showed me all the proof you're about to see. His patent application and chart after chart after chart proving the indicator worked. I was intrigued, but what really blew me away was the results of his beta test. You see, Mike had already shared his secret with a small group of 432 beta testers. Like I mentioned before, this was such an exclusive group, it was more likely for you to be struck and killed by lightning than to be accepted into this beta test group. But here's what's important. These beta testers are everyday folks just like you. And the results had been amazing. He even showed me a small sample of dozens of thank you notes he had received. Notes like this one from Anthony B. Last Thursday, the WPI registered a spike on Amazon, so I decided to have a go. I logged in again on Monday morning, and the trade had returned a profit of $3,716.03 in just a few days. Or this note from Robert Z. Using the indicator, I made $2,788 in FB in 1 day and $3,200 in NQ in 4 days. Or Stephen S., who says, OMG, I just checked as I did not look at all. The count is up to $129,054. Can you imagine if this happened to you? After seeing these success stories, I started to turn from skeptical to believer. But I decided to run my own historical analysis just to cover all the bases. Now, I know past performance is no guarantee of future results, but the results of this backtesting were also nothing short of stunning. It showed me the WPI has the potential to produce an average weekly gain of 350%. In other words, you could more than triple your money every week. It means investing just $5,000 in the average trade, you could collect a weekly paycheck of $22,500. And remember, since you're taking profit so quickly, week after week, when you start compounding these returns, your money multiplies very quickly. In fact, those $22,500 a week adds up to more than $1.1 million in a year. And yet, despite these amazing results, I simply couldn't share this information with anyone. You see, I became good friends with Mike, the creator of this indicator. I not only joined his beta test group, but he also brought me into his inner circle and asked me not to share it with anyone. I couldn't blame him. If you had discovered something as powerful as this indicator, wouldn't you keep it to yourself and make a fortune? For the sake of our friendship, I kept this secret to myself for years, but there was something that always bothered me. As someone who didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth, I knew it wasn't fair for the insiders to get richer, while the rest of us feed on the table scraps in the markets. That single fact ate away at me year after year. Mike's indicator was the only thing I've ever found that actually leveled the playing field. So I made it a mission to convince Mike to open this indicator up to more everyday Americans. I worked on him and I worked on him. Finally, for the reasons that will become clear soon, I convinced him to let me share it with my readers. In fact, you're only reading this because of a licensing agreement worth $1.3 million. Mike only had 2 conditions in granting me this exclusive license. Number 1, we don't reveal his real identity because he could become a target for powerful Wall Street insiders. And number 2, we don't share this with anyone else because he doesn't want this patent-pending indicator to gain publicity. I've agreed to those terms, and we've even signed a licensing agreement worth an estimated $1.3 million. How fast could you get rich? Let me show you. Last year, there was nothing exciting going on in the company St. Jude Medical. In fact, shares have been going nowhere for the past couple of years. Then, seemingly out of the blue, the WPI registered a spike on April 20. Take a look. For the next couple of days, nothing happened. It looked like the indicator would fail. But then 8 days later, boom! Abbott Laboratories announced it was buying the company. Reuters broke the news on April 28th, 11:03 a.m. By then, it was already too late for everyday investors to profit from the big one-day move. That's because the shares exploded in an instant, before the markets were even open. As CNBC reported, St. Jude shareholders will receive $85 per share. Shares were up 27% in the pre-market trading. By the time everyday investors heard the news, the match was already burned. But had you used the WPI, you would have had plenty of time to take a position. You have struck when the match was red hot. Because the indicator registered a spike 8 days before the public knew about the acquisition. And using my strategy, you could have turned that move into 1,576% windfall. In other words, had you invested $2,500 on April 20th when the spike appeared, you could have cashed out just 8 days later when the acquisition news broke, with a big paycheck of $41,900. Double your initial capital, and now you're looking at $83,800 in just 8 days. All this from a move that nobody could have predicted. Only insiders knew the acquisition was going to take place. And yet this indicator knew something big was coming. Isn't that amazing? Get in when you see a big spike, wait for the news to break, then get out a few days later with a big paycheck. It couldn't be easier. There's no need to risk money in long-term trades that go nowhere. And remember, this can work on any type of unexpected big news. For example, shares of La Jolla Pharmaceutical also had been going nowhere for months. Once again, there was no big news about this company at the time. Then on February 16, the WPI registered a spike. Take a look. Was something big about to be announced? Unless you're an insider, it was impossible to know for sure. But then just 11 days later, something big did happen. On February 27 at 7:32 a.m., MarketWatch published the following headline. The website reported, shares of La Jolla Pharmaceutical rocketed 51% in active pre-market trade Monday after the drug maker announced positive results from a phase 3 trial of its hypertension treatment. Once again, by the time the news hit the public, it was already too late for everyday investors to profit. The match was completely burned. But had you followed the WPI, you'd have had red-hot information. And you would have known with 11 days in advance that something big was likely to happen. In the end, you could have turned $2,500 into $9,550. That's almost 4 times your money in just 11 days. That's pretty cool, right? Simply get in when you see a spike and get out a few days later with a big paycheck, all while cutting your long-term market risk exposure. Of course, no method in the world can be 100% guaranteed, no matter how good its record. But you can see how well WPI works, week after week. Here's one more example. Shares of Duluth Holdings had been dropping for months. There was no reason for anyone to buy shares at the time. But then on March 17, the WPI registered a spike. As you can tell by now, that meant something big was about to happen. Sure enough, 5 days later, the company surprised investors. On March 22nd, Yahoo Finance reported, Shares of niche retailer Duluth Holdings are soaring after the company posted impressive fourth quarter earnings. By the time the news was announced, it was too late for the everyday investor to participate in the move. The match was already burned, but had you followed my strategy, you could have collected a big paycheck of $7,550 on March 22nd. Imagine walking away with more than $7,000 in just 5 days. It is all possible with the WPI. Can you see now why this patent-pending indicator is such a revolutionary tool? The little guy finally has a chance to profit from those kinds of big one-day moves, the kind of moves that have been making insiders rich for years. You see, we've all suspected that Wall Street was rigged against everyday investors. But it's worse than we thought. Kenneth A. from the University of Southern California has just published some new shocking evidence. His research shows that corporate insiders tend to tell family members and friends about upcoming corporate events. And these insiders and people in the network place trades before you and I hear the news from CNBC or read it in the Wall Street Journal. After analyzing 1,139 of those insider tips, he concluded, insiders earned substantial returns by trading in advance of specific corporate events. The average return from the date of the original leak to the official announcement of the event is 34.9% over an average holding period of 21 trading days. The same research also shows that these insiders walk away with a median $72,000 per trade. Imagine how much money you could make if you had the foreknowledge of mergers and acquisitions, results of clinical trials, regulatory announcements, earnings results, CEO turnovers, and any big corporate event that may trigger a monster one-day move. That's exactly how these insiders make a quick fortune, $72,000 per trade. Well, they walk away with a fortune by the time you and I hear the news. The match is already completely burned. Unless you're part of the insider network, there is no way for you to participate. Does that seem fair to you? Of course not. The cards are clearly stacked against outsiders like us, and that's why I'm so excited to share the WPI with you today. It's the only way for the little guy to level the playing field, and it's 100% legal. And as you've seen so far, there's only one way to capture those big surprising one-day moves. You have to be in the trade before the news hits the public. And since we're not insiders, there's only one way I know for us to do that, using the WPI. It's a one-of-a-kind indicator that allows you to track what insiders and people with special information are doing with their money in real time. You see, a lot of these insiders are sophisticated traders who bet their money in the options markets, where they can use leverage to make big money in a matter of days. Of course, when they place those trades, they don't announce it to anyone. A poker player would never reveal his hand. But what if there's a way for you to see exactly what they're doing with their money? Well, they don't reveal their trades, they do leave a trace behind in the options market. And that's where the WPI comes in. It uses a secret formula that tracks unusual behavior in the options market. Of course, I can't reveal the entire formula here. It's buried in the patent application files only. But here's a simple way to look at it. The indicator uses three main variables. WPI equals X, option volume, plus Y, open interest, plus Z, implied volatility. Number 1, options volume, the number of options contract traded that day. Number 2, open interest, the number of contracts traders are currently holding. And number 3, implied volatility, how much traders expect the stock to move in the coming weeks. I know this sounds like mumbo jumbo, but trust me, you don't even need to understand any of that in order to potentially profit. That's because the WPI calculates everything for you. Let me use shares of Microsoft as an example to show you how it works. Traders call this the options chain for Microsoft. It shows dozens of different options that are available, each with their own market data. Notice the 3 columns on the left show the volume, open interest, and implied volatility. While this information is available to the public, most people have no idea how to use that data. We're talking about thousands of data points, and this is just for one stock. Now multiply those thousands of data points by 6,241 because that's how many listed U.S. option companies there are out there. And now we're talking about 1 billion data points. That's the raw data that WPI uses to identify unusual activity in the markets. The algorithm picks up when the options data moves out of its normal range. For example, it might be normal to see open interest of 6,000 or so contracts for Microsoft, but then if it suddenly jumps to 40,000 in 1 week, that might trigger a spike in the WPI. Simply put, when the WPI registers a spike, it means for some reason sophisticated traders who might have insider information are betting heavily on that company. But how can it tip you off about big moves before they happen? Because the truth is, someone somewhere knows about corporate events before you and me hear about it on the news. Let me prove it to you. On May 31, the WPI registered a spike for shares of social network company LinkedIn. In other words, the indicator picked up unusual activity in the options market. Someone somewhere knew something big was about to happen. Sure enough, just 2 weeks later, the news broke when Microsoft published a press release saying the company was acquiring LinkedIn for $196 per share in an all-cash transaction valued at $26.2 billion. Shares of LinkedIn instantly skyrocketed from $131 to $192 per share. But there was no way for you to capture that big one-day move unless you were already in the trade before the news broke. And that's the power of the WPI. By tracking the unusual activity in the options market, it would have tipped you off about the big news. News that only company insiders could have possibly have known about. And using my strategy, you could have turned $5,000 into $68,500 in just 13 days. Imagine collecting a big paycheck of $68,500. That's a good salary for most people. And yet, you could have made that much money in a matter of days. Simply get in when you see the spike, get out a few days later when the news breaks. No need to leave your money at the mercy of the market moves. Here's another example. On December 22nd, after months of being flatlined, the WPI registered a huge spike for shares of an animal hospital company, VCA Inc. Someone somewhere knew something big was about to happen. Sure enough, just a few days later, before the markets opened January 9th, the website Business Insider broke the news. Pet food maker Mars Inc. is buying VCA for $93 a share. VCA's stock was up 30% in the pre-market trade. It's simply impossible for anyone to predict this, and yet, had you used my strategy, you could have turned this surprise move into a monster paycheck of $288,550, all in a matter of days. Same thing happened with shares of little-known data storage provider Nibble Storage. Despite shares going nowhere for months, the WPI registered a spike on March 3. Someone somewhere knew something big was about to happen. Just 4 days later, boom. Reuters broke this story. The stock instantly jumped from $8.62 to $12.50. In this case, you could have turned the surprising acquisition news into a $35,700 paycheck. I know these are unheard of gains, and that this sounds incredible. So if you're still wondering how this is even possible, researchers from New York University might have the answer. Menachem B. from New York University examined option trading volumes 30 days before acquisition news in the U.S. After analyzing data for a 16-year period, he noticed, for target companies, we document pervasive directional option activity consistent with strategies that would yield abnormal return to investors with private information. In plain English, he's seeing you can make a ridiculous amount of money if you can just spot these abnormal options activities, because it can allow you to get ahead of the major acquisition news before the public knows about it, and that's exactly what the WPI does. But it's not just acquisitions. Research from Stanford professor has confirmed unusual options activity can also predict surprising earnings announcements. After examining the predictive power of options volume, Professor Lee concluded, options market activity increases by more than 10% in the 4 days before quarterly earnings announcements. We show the direction of this pre-announcement trading foreshadows subsequent earnings news. In other words, by tracking options activity, you can position yourself to profit 4 days before the earnings are made public. Just look at what happened this year with shares of tech company Coherent Inc. WPI registered a big spike on January 30, indicating unusual activity in the options market. Someone somewhere knew something big was about to happen. The news came just 8 days later, after the market closed on February 7. The company reported much better earnings than anyone expected. When the market opened the next day, the stock was already trading much higher. Unless you were an insider, there was no way for you to know for sure that company would beat earnings expectations. But had you used the WPI, you could have grabbed a quick gain of 500%. turning $5,000 into a $30,000 paycheck in little more than a week. That's the kind of fast money you can make when you can get ahead of the big news, before it's released to the public. Simply get in when you see the spike, get out when you see the news break, and collect your big paycheck. Then you move on to the next money-making play. Look what happened with shares of medical device company Assure Technologies earlier this year. The WPI registered a spike on January 31. Someone, somewhere knew something big was about to happen. A few days later, the stock popped when the company surprised everyone with strong earnings results. In this case, you could have turned a surprise earnings announcement into a $17,150 paycheck. Same thing with specialty metals company Allegheny Technologies. The WPI registered a spike on January 19. Then just 5 days later, boom, the company reported surprise earnings, sending the stock exploding higher. It was impossible for everyday investors to capture that big one-day move. But had you used the WPI, you could have walked away with an $18,400 paycheck. Isn't that incredible? From these 3 surprising earnings announcements alone, you could have made $65,550 in just a matter of days. Get in when you see the spike, get out right after the big move a few days later, and walk away with a big paycheck. Of course, no strategy times things perfectly 100% of the time, and there's always risk involved with any investment. But this is the only way I know of catching those big surprising moves week in and week out. It's really a shame that this powerful indicator has remained a secret for so long, but if you missed out before, please don't beat yourself up. Because today, that all changes. Starting right now, there are opportunities like these every single week for you. And as a matter of fact, the WPI has just registered a spike. Get in now before you read about it in the news. You see, the WPI has just registered a spike for a company I've had my eye on for a while. Take a look. That means there's unusual activity in the options market, and that someone somewhere knows something big is about to happen to this company. It's time to get ahead of everyone else. There's no time to waste. To help you get started, I'd like to send you a secure email with all the information you need to make a fortune from this new WPI indicator spike. The subject line of the email will be, "How to collect a $10,200 paycheck by next week." I'd like to send you this email in the next 5 minutes. Then by this time next week, you could be looking at a $10,200 paycheck. Of course, I don't have insider information on this company, so I can't tell you exactly what might happen, what kind of news they might release, or when the big move will happen. All we know is the WPI picked up unusual trading activity, and that, on average, something big tends to happen 7 days later. Keep in mind, that's just the average based on our historical testing. There could be some big announcement as early as tomorrow. If this happens, this opportunity will be gone forever. It will be too late to profit once you read about it in the financial news, which is why I'd like to rush you this secure email right now. And there's more, because this email is just a small part of a brand new project. The project that started with the licensing agreement I mentioned earlier. You see, Mike just started the process of launching his own hedge fund based on the WPI. But once his fund is up and running, it will not be designed for everyday folks like you. You have to be an accredited investor with a net worth of over $1 million, and he'll charge 1% of assets and 10% of annual returns in investment fees. What that means is that if you gave Mike $500,000 and he returns 100% during the year by using his patent-pending WPI indicator, you pay him $55,000 in fees alone, $55,000 in fees. Like I said, it's not designed for everyday investors, and that's when it dawned on me. What if I could use the WPI to help everyday investors make a fortune in the market, while Mike used it for his high net worth clients? I immediately called Mike to ask him. Now, as you can possibly imagine, Mike is a capitalist, so everything comes down to a price. After negotiating, we settled on an agreement that could cost us an estimated $1.3 million in licensing fees. But it's worth every penny, because now I'm the only person in the world who can use this indicator and share the results with a small group of readers. Specifically, Mike asked me to share this with no more than 1,000 people, because he doesn't want the world to know about it. Today we're opening the doors to 1,000 charter members. Here's how it works. Step 1. First, every Monday I'll be using the weekly paycheck indicator to identify unusual options activity across the U.S. market. Step 2. I'll do my own analysis of each opportunity and find the one that could hand you the biggest paycheck. Step 3, finally, I'll send you an email every Monday with the exact instructions on how to profit, the exact setup, what trade to make, and when to take profits. So far, the success has been astonishing. Here's what those 432 people are saying about this indicator. This has to be the most powerful opportunity I have seen in 20 years and probably one of the most simple. I'm up about $19,000. I've banked $99,076. Not too bad for 2 months. Made just over $1,000 in a week. Good money for less than 15 minutes of work. It is grossing me a fortune in capital gains. I am up $68,050 on KR and SWKS alone, and another $51,950 on 5 other trades. I've had 9 out of 10 winning trades. Phenomenal stuff. Using the WPI has increased my confidence trading in the market. It almost feels unfair or like cheating. Needless to say, I'm extremely excited with my results thus far. The downside risk feels very low as well. I made $21,000 since January and probably another $4,000 or $5,000 in the next hour or so. I made 90% in 2 days. The indicator in particular is genius. It felt quite good to be making money when the market was down. This is something I have never been able to do before I started scanning for stocks and using the WPI. It really was exciting. I made $20,743 in 9 weeks. I had to drop you an email to say what you created here so far looks like the best software I've ever seen for choosing the best stocks. This is truly amazing stuff. It showed me exactly how, when, and why stocks move, and when and how to get involved. Brilliant. Although with only 4 trades, I've had nice success. Only one $100 loss, and overall, $4,400 profit. Imagine getting access to an exclusive patent-pending indicator that gives you the ability to collect a big paycheck every single week. Paychecks of $3,030, $9,550, $35,700, and even $68,500 every week. How much would that be worth to you? Before you answer, remember we are talking about a revolutionary tool that allows you to get ahead of big news before the public. And like I showed you earlier, Mike's about to charge his high net worth hedge fund clients a potential $55,000 or more in annual fees. Also remember, I agreed to this $1.3 million licensing fee. So there's a ton of money wrapped up in this project. But first, I understand you might still have some questions about our strategy. I've tried to anticipate the most common ones. Let me answer them right now. Question number 1, does this strategy involve buying stocks? Answer. You're welcome to buy stocks, but in order to maximize your gains, we paired the WPI with a unique financial instrument. I have no doubt you can make a nice profit if you simply buy shares of companies following a spike in the WPI. But if you want to collect the big paychecks, week in and week out, you'll need to use something I briefly mentioned earlier, something I call fast cash contracts. It's a new financial instrument that maximizes the profits of fast-moving opportunities. As Fidelity Investments says, with fast cash contracts, it may be possible to more efficiently employ short-term strategies including targeting volatility associated with an earnings announcement, economic report, or other key event that might occur on a specific date. These contracts started as a pilot program back in 2005 at the Chicago Board of Exchange. Yes, the same place I've worked. For that reason, I know these contracts like the palm of my hand. Unfortunately, not 1 in 1,000 investors know these powerful contracts are now available to everyday folks. In short, these contracts create a 7-day window for you to collect a big paycheck. At the end of those 7 days, they must pay out. There's no need to wait weeks or even months to see these gains. And since our backtesting shows the average WPI trade lasts 7 days, this is the perfect instrument for our strategy. Get in when you see the spike, get out a few days later. There's no need to leave your money at the mercy of the market. Even better, compared to the price of stocks, these contracts cost almost nothing. This means you can get started with very little money, sometimes as little as $100. But what I really like about these little-known contracts is their potential to make you rich. In one case, you could have boosted your gains by a factor up to 48 times. That means if a stock jumps 10% in a day due to unexpected good news, this contract could go up 480%. And that's how you're able to collect big paychecks fast. It's truly a match made in heaven with the predictive power of the WPI and these fast-moving contracts. I promise you see the fastest gains ever. Which brings me to the next question. Question number 2. How much money can I make? Once you combine the WPI with these fast money contracts, the gains get really ridiculous. Like I showed you earlier, our backtesting showed the potential to triple your money every week. But in extreme circumstances, the gains could be much bigger, big enough that a single trade could really change your life. Let me just show you what happened very recently. The WPI registered a spike for straight path communications on April 7, indicating something big was about to happen. On that Friday, shares closed at around $36. The following Monday, April 10th, AT&T issued a press release announcing its plans to buy that company. When the market opened on Monday, shares of Straight Path were already trading around $91. There was no way for everyday investors to profit from that monster one-day move. But had you used the WPI, you could have turned $5,000 into $367,850 over a weekend. Double the initial investment, and you're looking at $735,700, a retirement fortune. Of course, this is an extreme situation, but it shows you what is possible. Can you imagine if this happened to you? That one weekend that could change your life forever. That's why I'd like to send you the first WPI indicator spike today. All the details are in the email I'll send you titled, How to Collect $10,200 Paycheck by Next Week. The WPI has just registered a spike. Question number 3. What if there's no big news after the spike? No worries, you could still make money. Of course, this indicator doesn't work 100% of the time. There's no such thing. But even if there's no big news, you could still make money. Because, along with the WPI, I use other strategies to increase your odds of winning, such as only recommending trades that are already moving up. We also use a very strict risk management strategy to limit your losses to an absolute minimum. Simply put, at the first sign the trade is moving against us, I'll send you an urgent alert telling you to get out. I recently sat down with Mike, the creator of WPI, in an undisclosed location to discuss details about the indicator. And he agreed to go on camera on the condition that I would hide his identity and change his voice. So I hired a production team to make it happen. And I'd like to send you this exclusive video free of charge. In this 30-minute conversation, we covered everything you need to know to start using this indicator right away. You'll hear directly from the man who developed this indicator. The secret he reveals on minute 455 alone could make you thousands of dollars. Next week, you could make more than enough to pay for your annual subscription. Just look at what happened to some of these beta testers. Anthony B. says he made $3,716 on Amazon in just 3 days. Robert Z. says, I made $3,200 in NQ in 4 days. And Barbara S. reports that she almost tripled her money in just 2 days. According to our backtesting, a small $1,000 investment would have returned $4,500 on average within a week. Imagine turning $1,000 into $4,500 week in and week out. For that reason, the regular price of $3,000 is already an incredible deal. I mean, I don't know any other service that has the potential to pay for itself in as little as 1 week. But I understand you don't fully know me yet, and that I'm going to need to earn your trust first. So I'm going to do 2 very special things for you right now. I'm going to lower the price even more, down to a crazy price of $2,000. That's a full $1,000 off the already discounted price. We guarantee that our model portfolio will give you a chance to double your money at least 20 times over the next year. If we don't, just give us a call and we'll give you an extra year completely free. In other words, we're fully covering the cost of your subscription. That's how confident I am about this indicator. It's the only way I know of legally getting ahead of big news before the public even knows about it. Like I showed you today, using the WPI, you could have collected the following paychecks. $26,450 on the acquisition of Sinosure, $15,100 when Duluth Holdings announced surprise earnings, $23,550 on a surprising FDA approval for Sarepta Therapeutics, $10,200 on acquisition news of Global Blood Therapeutics, and $15,150 when Chemars settled a lawsuit. And you could have collected each of these within a week. Look, you've seen all the charts, you've seen the academic research, You've seen how much money some of Mike's beta testers have already made using this patent-pending indicator. And I proved to you that the only way to capture these big one-day surprising moves is to be in the trade before the news. And I've showed you that the WPI is the only indicator that can help you do that. I've given you a special charter membership offer with the lowest price we'll ever offer and a performance guarantee that fully covers the price of your subscription. Now it's time for a decision. Most people are content with table scraps, with gains of 5 to 10% a year, and most people only dream about getting rich. But they never make it happen. They retire on Social Security and pray their benefits are enough to cover their basic living costs. Since you've read this letter so far, I think you're not most people. I'm trying to get this indicator in the right hands, and I think you're one of them. If I'm right and you're still with me, I want you to get started immediately. The WPI is just registered a spike. The next paycheck could be just around the corner. It could happen as early as tomorrow. The only question is, will you get in before the big move, or will you pass this up and let someone else make $10,200 or more in your place? Now's the time to level the playing field. Now you've got a shot at making the fastest gains you'll ever see and collect paychecks of $5,290, $10,200, and even up to $28,550 week in and week out.